two cannon, all men are equal, said Napoleon Bonaparte.
Today, the only one who exists.
In history, developments of technology of war was usually spread out through different parts of the world. But one fort stands out as the one where an extraordinary amount of innovations and world's firsts took place. This fort was the grandfather of the East Wall, the Maginot Line, the Atlantic Wall. So much of it started right here at Fort de Mutzig, or Festung Kaiser Wilhelm II. Here, born out of one war and preparing for another. In this short time, the world saw a change from mounted cavalry attacks, black powder cannons, to the steel dome encased howitzers. But first, let's have a history recap. In the early 1800s, Napoleon I was a man who defined warfare and tactics for years to come. He was meticulous, methodical, believing in careful planning and hitting fast and hard, and the wars of maneuver. He understood the methods of war and how to use his artillery. In fact, his trademark tactic was to concentrate his artillery. Now, as Napoleon held sway over most of Europe, it was almost a given that a war was coming between himself and an alliance of various other countries, British, Russian, Prussians, amongst those feeling Napoleon now too powerful. It was not until the Sixth Grand Coalition before the Allies stood in Paris, with Napoleon exiled, and not before enormously costly battles and losses on all sides had occurred. Now 50 years later, Napoleon's nephew, Louis, was in charge of a different France, one more democratic, one in which Napoleon III actually had to listen somewhat to the people, and they wanted war with Prussia. And certainly the Chancellor of Prussia, Otto von Bismarck, and the King of Prussia too wanted war with France, wanting once again to curb a powerful France from rising. And after a costly wars only 50 years before, there was certainly no love lost between these nations. Under Napoleon III, France had seen a modernization of its armies. It could honestly be said of Napoleon III, he was the great builder of France. The Paris Opera was built in his time, as were many other beautiful structures of Paris, and the construction even went on throughout the night through the use of electric lights for one of the first times. But Prussia had also learned with its professional army, and two of the new additions from lessons learned and adapted by the Prussians was the use of railways to quickly shift their armies, and that of modern artillery and its use. The soldiers of the Second Republic, that's Napoleon III, had equipped its armies with the most modern of rifles, the chassepot, a needle gun, just slightly superior to the needle gun serving the Prussian armies. However, Louis Napoleon had not learned that lesson of how to quickly deploy and shift armies on the battlefield, nor had he really learned the true value of deployment of artillery, still fielding the muzzle loaders of his uncle. However, the Prussians had learned something and equipped their armies with the new breech-loading Krupp guns. In order to gain support of the southern Germanic countries, the Northern Confederation under Bismarck, they needed an excuse. And by use of what can be seen as a snub to France, having offended their envoy, France now declared war as was expected. This was expected and did draw in the southern Germanic states to side with the Prussians. But Napoleon had misjudged just how fast Bismarck could assemble and deploy his armies, and his own army had not prepared for such a fast move, and a fast-moving but short and extremely violent war ensued. In almost all of the battles, the Prussians and their German allies suffered extremely under the gunfire of the French rifles, but the French were beaten soundly by the modern artillery in just a matter of weeks. And the great cities had suffered from sieges: Metz, Strasbourg, Paris. So now a new lesson was taken away from this war by all involved. It was to build great forts surrounding the important cities, both for defense, but also in order to control and dominate the roadways so the enemy could not move his troops and supplies. Fortifications and long-range artillery was a way of the future. And since after the Franco-Prussian War ended in 1871, everybody knew a new war was coming to settle these latest scores on the continent, especially with large parts of France having been ceded to Germany after Napoleon III's defeat. Now all sides was constructing forts around their important cities and roadways, and the race towards World War I and the true beginning of mechanized war was on. Another lesson that must be taken away from this war is it clearly demonstrated that the Prussian military educational system was superior to the French model. Prussian staff officers were trained to exhibit initiative and independent thinking, just like you'd see later on in World War II, and you'd see in innovations between the wars. This was complete opposite of the French system that suffered from an education and promotional system that stifled intellectual development and constantly kept the French officers and junior officers from seizing initiatives. Another thing that came out of the Franco-Prussian War was the very first photograph of actual combat. Now with Metz and Lorraine in German hands, some of the most amazing modern forts were constructed here, and the brand new developments in technology was tested here. And one of the most important forts of the 19th and 20th century, as it relates to future fortress construction, was this: Fort de Mutzig. The German-built fort was the first one built after the development of melinite, a new revolutionary explosive invented in 1885 by the French. This new explosive was much more powerful than black powder previously used, and because of this, the fort was reinforced with cement for the first time, moving away from the traditional brick and stone forts. And from then on, a new era in building and fortifications had begun. It was to become the prototype of a modern 20th century fortification. Mutzig was constructed and evolved to contain many of the latest technologies and equipment of the time. Concrete, reinforced concrete, galvanized corrugated metal ceilings, iron armored turrets, electricity, new methods for secure observation, periscopes, the use of radio. It all started here. It is undoubtedly the most significant place of innovation and the prototype of fortifications of the 20th century, such as Fort de Metz, Thionville, the Maginot Line, the Ostwall, Odewaardeborgen, the forts of the West Wall and Atlantic Wall too. All were based on designs tested here at Fort de Mutzig. It was where the decentralized fortification originated. By constructing the many components of the fort spread out, artillery batteries, shelters, observation posts, they were less vulnerable than a traditional centralized fort. A large number of these innovations seen here were adapted and became standard across the board.
I'm trying to find the beginning of things. Where did certain technologies start? And when we get past the Middle Ages, we get into the forts. We get into the forts with the armored domes. And it's just amazing to be here in a place like Mutzig, where you have the armored observation domes number 1 and number 2 that was ever made are right here. see firing port, firing. That's not a. That's firing ports. That's firing ports.
This is projector and
Before World War One. Ooh.
the machine gun. Machine gun MB08, but you can mount the 03 gun too. You have only to disassemble this support because the two guns are not large, the same
Yes,
size.
about the same size. Yeah. And that mounting was pre-World War One.
Yes, called Festungslafette 03, 93.
Fortress Lafette. Yeah. Yes. Water cooled.
Water to cool the barrel. So in the middle you have the observation.
Oh, very clever.
Observation. And on the top you have the opening for the projector.
Projector. I didn't know they had the good lights.
Here you see the first countermine. It was digging by Russian prisoners during World War I. You have to hear the digging works from the enemy who tried to attack underground.
Yes.
The only way, to resist against that is to hear the digging
Just like yes.
works by acoustic.
Just like under World War One, under the trenches, they would mine under each other.
And this concept is old in Middle Age.
Oh yes,
it exists
but
still.
Was the fort surrounded during World War One?
No. It was too great. The French army had not enough guns to attack this fort. The last one, the pneumatic hammer is used.
Oh yes. And we're still in the World War I construction.
Most of the concepts of the Maginot Line are invented here in Mutzig. French army studies this fort after World War I, 3 years. The officer who built the Maginot Line. This part was digged out by German army, but the works are stopped in 1916. French army finished the work after the war. This part is a concrete from French army, 1928. After the World War I, you have a new problem, gas attack.
Yes.
And underground fortification, it's a great problem. The only way is to create suppression.
Yes.
And you need great air pipes. This was conceived for put in the air pipe. But the building is stopped by French army at the end of 28 because they began the build of Maginot Line and they don't need this fortification. We pass under the ditch. And now we have to close to go up behind the wall of the counter sky. You see, we have to cross around 20 meters. Now we connect the original German connection tunnel is in form of an egg.
Yes. The egg is the strongest shape there is.
Yes.
And this
concept is more modern than Maginot Line. The difference between the Westwall 1936 and here is only the concept of blocks or concrete on like a tunnel.
Yes.
But the shape is the same. You know the Otto-Wartebogen in Poland today, built is 36. You have the same shapes, different sizes, but the same concept. Yeah. You see ventilation, you see, you have an electrical motor engine to
For the ventilation, for the air.
But you have a hand security. When you have no electricity, you must 24 men in one room.
They even have a headrest? They even have a sloping headrest.
This is a shelf for the backpack, and the rifles were put on here.
Yeah. And you have the original bunker oven? Wow.
Yeah.
This is a serious bunker. This is much nicer than World War II. This is so much more elaborate. This is for coal.
Yeah. Each room has one oven. You need more than 400 oven. Each year we restore some rooms.
So you are all volunteers and you don't get any money from anywhere.
The restoration is only driven by volunteers.
So this looks like an armored observation.
This is a mobile observator.
So you would bring this and put it over your trench, for instance?
Yes, for the artillery.
For the artillery. But you if you had to move to a more forward trench, you would bring this?
You can deplace it from one point to another.
And that's a World War I design?
World War I, yeah. Here you have the older door system with you close it, you can open it here. The front of the work of the barrack is here. You can see it. 300 men took place in this.
In 22 years of construction, Mutzig grew to the point of becoming the largest and most powerful fortification in Europe. And when the war was declared in 1914, the fort covered 254 hectares. It made up of nearly 50 structures, 2 forts, 6 batteries, 12 artillery observations, and around 20 infantry shelters, 3 concrete barracks, 4 power stations with 18 generators, 16 kitchens, 6 bakeries, and 4 wells, and so on.
This is a situation 98. You have an evolution between this and this. You have only one pipe for the sanitary.
So this came first?
Yeah, this is older.
And then?
1900. And here, 98.
Were these gas-tight doors as well, airtight, or?
No.
That was too soon.
No, we have no gas protection.
That's right.
This is the reason because the fortification of before World War I cannot be used for the second one.
Probably the most elaborate toilets I have seen in any of the forts.
Fully restored because here all was destroyed.
What year?
You need a thick cover to create the emanation heavier as the air. You make a depression to
pull the bad air out. So there's a septic tank, or?
Yeah, under fleet you have a room like this to the
crack.
Yeah.
We can say crack. So what year is this? This is 1908 as well, or
This is 1908. Yeah. You know the concept of Farpanzer? The first trying to make cupola mobile. This is only a prototype. This was not built only these 2 was built. Because this is observation and the German army don't buy this model. The 2 prototype was sent to Mutzig because this is the first modern fortification. You see the date 1889. It is before the beginning of the construction of Mutzig. So 4 years later, the fort is built and they receive the 2 only prototype.
Was the idea that it was going to be rolled into a fort?
Yes, it's a mobile, but on a carriage with two horses to displace.
Two horses?
Yeah. Here you see the normal Farpanzer. 5.3.
So that's a 5.3.
It was built at more than 300 for German army. Mutzig had 16 of them. During World War I, they was spread on different areas. This one was exploded in South Alsace.
Okay.
And we took the rest and restored it fully.
And you just roll it in, anchor it, roll it up, put it somewhere else. Well, what year was this? This was one of the first.
Yeah.
So we're like 1895?
89.
89.
It's older than the fortification.
It is.
Originally, they was conceived as a weapon system for the infantry. They have the carriage, with two horses they can transport it, but it was too difficult to use it concretely. And so they decided to use it for fortification. It's a smaller area.
It does make more sense. How heavy is this?
2 tons.
2 tons, and still, if you're inside and anything bounces off,
Yeah.
you're still not having a good day.
Absolutely. It was too small inside.
Yes.
They can walk with a closed door. We have a lot of picture with in use. The doors are still open.
Yeah.
Because air, because...
Yes. I mean, but it's the beginning of a concept.
Yeah, yeah.
You have 2 of these guys sitting here with an observation platform in the center.
From the perspective of the infantry and of the military and the procurement office, I could see the appeal of the Farpanzer. It was light, it was cheap, it was operated by a very small crew, it could be transported after horses, on trucks, on the bed of trains. It was easy to position, it was hard to see, it could lend infantry support firing canister shot and shrapnel. It had a range of between 400 to 3200 meters, firing several different types of armament. One a 3.7mm cannon, the other one a 5.3cm cannon. It was lightly armored, but being dug in, it was still fairly safe in concealment. But again, we're back to highly mobile, easy to use, easy to operate, few people. That could almost be the same thing you would say for, say, a Panzer I or a Panzer II in years later. This was the direction. You armor protect your infantry, you give them light weaponry that's easy to use, and you send them off to the front. Both in defense and attack, the Farpanzer had its place. They were cheap, they were exported all over around the world and saw a lot of different combat from the early 1900s. Some 444 were made, and quite possibly more under a license.
It is just very hard to not love this little thing. The Farpanzer. Yes.
A 4 is artillery. Without artillery, you have no 4. It makes no sense because the aim of a fortification is to block the enemy who needs roads and railway to deploy his heavy charges, guns, ammunition, supply. The main gun is a 10.5. The firing range belongs 11 kilometers. One gun is okay, but you need a lot of guns. More you have, the better. You need to rise the elevation of the gun.
Yes.
And the opening is greater. Greater you have the range, the greater the opening. The engineer searches for solution to protect the opening, the firing opening. You have 2 methods: minimum
Yes.
opening or disappearing technique.
Yes.
The 2 systems was in a test in Mutzig. 8 of each are built on the first works of Mutzig, and 2 years long they was tested with real soldiers, not with specialists or engineers. After this test, they decided how they will, what systems they will use to the 10.5 turret.
What was the problems with the turret?
The first system was this: the turret can go down, and so the fine part, when it's in a lower position, you can see the opening, the fire opening, so it is protected.
Yes.
But you can fire. Each rising process needs a few minutes, so you lose the capacity of firing.
Yes. What year is this?
1893. You see the counterweight. The mobile part have a weight of 10 tons. One man can rise it because the counterweight.
So you have to pull the gun back before
this
you
is
lower.
one of the problems of this technique, the complexity.
Yes.
The complexity have the consequence you need a long time to train the troop.
Yes.
This is a first problem. In German fortification, you have only reserve soldier, no professional. This man came in at the declaration, and you have 2 weeks to train it.
Yeah.
You have 4,000 soldiers, and you had 2 weeks to train it for the whole weapon system of the fortification.
And the more moving parts, the harder it is. And here's a lot of moving parts.
What happens when you are firing? The enemy can see you,
Yes.
and at this time he fire on the turret. You are wounded. You can be wounded because the thickness of this part is not very great, 4 centimeters. When you take the principle of this, the relation between caliber and weight and cost, you arrive for a 10.5 with 3.5 meters long, 3 times longer than this gun.
Yes.
You have a turret very large, which have a theoretical weight of 250, 300 tons.
More cost, more range.
Cost, more, and you can build less turrets. The second system, you mount the gun not on the traditional system, the axe here, but you mount it with a Kugel, turn around this point. And this closes the opening. You have only the mouth of the gun. The probability that the enemy shell can reach this point is 1 to 1 million.
Yes.
So you can, with this system, turn constantly, fire constantly. You have no reduction of the capacity of firing with this system.
And you can use a heavier gun.
You can make a long gun who is longer than the diameter of the cupola.
Yes, because that's a short. That's more a howitzer.
This is a short howitzer, but the 10.5 you see on the other can be longer than the diameter. And in the room you have only 2 cranks for the height and the direction. The same than a normal gun. So you take an artillerist of each artillery regiment. In a few hours he's able to use this turret. Shells from 40 kilo at 7.5 kilometers. You have a weight from 65 tons. 55, 65. 250 or 300 for the 10.5. 98 they began to conceive the 10.5 turrets, 85 tons, 9 shots per minute, 11 kilometers. You compare this with French solution, the Galopin turret. You saw it in Douaumont or Uxelier, Épinal.
Yep.
You have a turret, his weight 250 tons.
And it's expensive, it's complicated.
For the main price in German, you can build 3 turrets for 1 French turret. The French turret had a capacity of 4 shells per minute, a range of 7.5 kilometers. 9 multiplied by 3, 27 shots, 11 kilometers. The explanation why French force received only 1 turret. Smallest German fortification have 6 turrets. The smallest, 6 turrets. The rule at this time, when you attack a modern fortification, you must provide 10
times the attacker.
10 times more attack guns than the fortification. You take a fort with 1 Uxelier or Douaumont, 1 turret, you need 10 guns to attack. Mutzig, 220 guns to attack. Or French army at the war beginning have 315 guns, heavy guns. 2/3 of French artillery will be necessary to attack Mutzig.
Did they attack Mutzig?
Two-thirds.
Did they attack Mutzig? Did they fight here?
No.
And in August 1914, nearly 7,000 men took up their stations here in all the structures.
Okay, I see a lot of electricity going on here.
Yeah. This room will be restored in the next months. The painting we have, when we restore a room, we dismantle the whole installation and restore, and then we build it back.
This was all again World War I era.
Yeah.
Electricity.
100%. The only difference during World War I, the tension was 110 volt, like US today, and during current and not alternative.
Direct current.
Yeah.
I am so impressed with these cables because they look exactly like they did in World War II.
German invented the whole concepts of the modern fortification. Here you have one of the 4 water wells. They took water at 220 meters deep. The capacity for, how do you say, cubic meter, 2,000 liters per hour is the capacity.
And the water tank is the one next to us.
Yeah. And you need 3 of them in use to provide each soldier with 20 liter water a day.
So you have 3 water pumps?
We have 4.
3 or 4.
The 4th is necessary to make maintenance of each other well.
So you can turn one off when you need to, And this is all electrically operated?
No, diesel. You have one of the 16 kitchen of the fortification.
Kitchen, cool.
This is not restored.
I mean, this looks good. If this is not restored, it looks good. It looks good already. I mean, this is in very good shape. And this is pre-World War I.
Yeah.
I mean, there's not even any rust on them. There's the original, they're not even rusty.
Yeah.
What are you going to do to them to restore them? They're perfect. So So this is where you would cook for how many? So at each fort, so that you had 6,000 people in the whole fort. So you had what, 1,700 in every.
In this area, you have around 1,500.
So you had to cook for 1,000 people
here. 2 kitchens.
Okay.
In this area. In the whole area, 16 kitchens. You have not the possibility to make fire in the day, because the smoke shows the presence of the fortification to the enemy.
Yes.
And by gunfire on the floor, destruction of the chimney, so you have a problem with smoke and monoxide of carbon. So you have to prepare the food in the night. Meat and vegetable. At the end of the night, the 2 components was put in this, which is we have a water mantle. You have a water tie, so it remains warm to the midday of the next day, and the food is distributed to the soldier at midday. The difference between Maginot and German fortification, the power plants were not strong enough to put all with electricity.
So this hallway is built in 1895 or?
No, this part is 1913.
13.
13.
And now we're coming back to the egg.
Yeah. The tunnel is built 1914. You have here the date.
Of course. Where? 1914, that is.
Yeah.
I don't remember when I was impressed by a place as I am with this. This is extremely impressive given this was the birthplace of all the technology that evolved from before World War I. So this is just a ventilation.
You see the daylight here when you look in the tube.
I do.
70 meters deep. This is the best example of the concept of gas. You have no protection against gas because before World War I
there was no gas.
No gas. You cannot protect you against a weapon that
does not exist. This is the first time I've been 70 meters underground and I don't feel that I walked down 70 meters of stairs. And you had the corrugated metal roofs that you see.
This is introduced 1910 to avoid the falling down from part of the concrete by heavy firing. During the Japanese-Russian War 1904, garrison surrender because the part fall on their head and they have a panic.
So when they built this fort, they really learned the lessons from wars all over the world.
All over the world.
Okay.
Now in one of the 6 bakeries of the fortification. It's the only one which exists today of this kind of technology. The society Werner und Fleiderer exists still today in Stuttgart, Germany. They was absolutely surprised to discover that we have the first engine. They have no more. It's the only one. German soldier receive at each day 715 gram bread. You have to provide in this bakery 800 kilo per night.
Wow.
Only in the night. That's explain why you have the modern bakery system who remains today.
And that is World War I as well, that oven?
1913, yeah.
That looks like what you see in a shop today.
Yeah. The constructor is based in Hamburg. Why Hamburg? Because this society construct oven for ships. Because the problem was by firing on the fall, artillery firing, you have vibration, and a normal constructed oven have a problem with vibration, and so you have a risk of smoke and oxide in the room. Ships with sea, you have the same problem, and they developed a technique for ships, and so the fortification constructor use only existent solution. They have no the idea to construct a special construction for fortification.
It just works.
Yeah.
What year is this?
It works. The second point is they have to produce bread continuously, because the night in the summer is short. You have 6-7 hours, no more. You have to produce 800 kilo in a few hours. The traditional ovens, you make fire in the oven. It's not, when you have no more heat, you must make a new fire, and this takes time. So the society have a Perkin system. This system is invented in 1880. Fire is in the rear part of the oven, and these tubes bring the heat to the
front of the whole oven.
Yeah, and so you can produce bread in continuously, 220 kilo per hour. The concept is invented 1880 in England. You see the end of the tubes here?
Yeah.
In the tube you have a little quantity of water. The heat arrive at 80, the boiling point, and so you have a circuitry of water and
steam.
Steam.
So this is where you put all your bread on here, and then you just bake it.
So you can dismount the bread.
This is a very large water tank.
Water tanks?
Oh, it's encased in cement, or is this a cement water tank?
You have here the range.
So there's actually water in it.
Yeah.
And this is another one?
Yeah. 50 cubic meter.
My great-grandfather was a mechanic.
Yeah, okay.
My grandfather was the head of a shipyard in Denmark.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, this is what my childhood smelled like. Oh, I love this.
The engine room, the work places with oil tanks, with two pressure air tanks, with water pumps for the cooling, machinery, original from fortification.
This is the grease tank?
Yeah.
Yeah.
To clean the
just like we see today. I mean, that's... I guess that's the fun part when you see company names that still exist. That's the oil tank.
The oil tank and the fuel tank is here.
This looks like a small U-boat.
Yeah.
And this was again World War I, pre-World War I fuel tank.
Yeah.
When was this built? Do we know?
1930. 54 cubic meter. 3 months capacity.
Holy hell! This is a ship. So you have the four engines.
The whole fortification have 18 engines.
18 engines.
Today it's only one which is restored.
Are they ship engines by design or?
No. It was used for power plants, for water pumps, for a lot.
So they're standard diesel engines.
This model is particularly interesting for military because it starts in 1 minute. The problem, your military use, you can reactive quickly. So the problem of the diesel engine is the start process. You have to heat the first engine, need 10 minutes to start. And 95, the Society Deutsch, you can read it here, Society Deutsch, conceived this concept of a diesel engine with a compressor which bring 35 bar, you know?
Yes.
Bar? And through the green tube, this air pressure spread the diesel in the cylinder. So you don't need to to heat the engine before starting.
So of course
the pressure of 30 bar is enough to bring the diesel to burn.
And this was again.
And this idea very interesting for the military use. And so the first engine, who was gas engines, was replaced by this model.
What year is this?
1930. They are built 1930. Water is used to cool the engine, but a part of the cooling works with evaporation. So you have a risk of unset.
Calcium, yes.
Yeah. And so you have here a station to treat the water to put out the calcium.
So this is a decalcifying plant?
Yeah. For the cooling.
They thought of everything.
Yeah. When a visitor visits only one fortification, it must be Mutzig.
I agree. I could not agree more.
It's the only one for the whole fortification because the concept of operation rooms appear after the new reglement 9010 for the medical part. The old version was only infirmary. The wounded man was separated in two categories. The less one, which a treatment can return to their their working place. And the other one, too heavy wounded, was transported to hospitals outdoor of the fortification.
Yeah.
The problem was to avoid that they die because blood
poisoning.
Yeah.
Yes.
You put
tourniquet.
Yeah, and so you have a problem. This gives a during of life for 4 or 5 hours. So transport duration to the next hospital is a day, a minimum of a half day.
Yeah.
They died on the way to the hospital. The beginning of the statistics at the end of the 19th shows that 94 heavy wounded died on the transport.
And I guess this is lessons learned from this American Civil War, the Russian, Prussian-French wars.
It's in the air. And so in the new rules of 1910 say we must treat this man as soon as possible. And so you have at this time such operation, but the main instrumentation is
the bone saw.
This bone saw. It's the only way. You have only two doctors for 2,000 men. For the whole fortification, 6 doctors. If you have a heavy fighting on the floor, you have 100 of wounded men.
Yeah.
They have to go fast, as quick as possible. So they cut. It's the best way to save the life.
Yeah.
The goal was to save life. They save millions of lives like this. But they don't think at the consequences of these millions of men who go home with the lack of arms or foods. I gave the count, the war of 1870, 240,000 dead, 240,000 dead, 20,000 heavy wounded came back to home. 10% globally. First World War I, 10 million dead, 20 million heavy wounded who go back. 200%. The explanation is here. This is the explanation. This evolution permit to save 15 million lives. But 15 million wounded men who can't work because if a lack of only one hand at this time you can't do anything. Manually works. Agriculture, an enormous problem of social problem.
Yes.
At this time, the crisis of 1929-30 is in part of the consequences.
Because the state has to take care of all these wounded men.
The society, the woman must go work in the factory.
To support the men who lost arms and legs,
Begin of an evolution in our society, equality of men. In this room, you see how we imagine the fully restoration of the fort, like this.
Yes.
Each detail is now so as it was 1914. This kitchen was fully empty. You see the picture I took 1974.
So where did you get all this?
We have 16 kitchens on the fortification, and some of them was completed at this time. We dismounted them and the restored part to bring it back to. 1998, 2 periscope system was tested. 2 society, Zeiss, Jena, and Goetz, Berlin, was tested. This is Goetz and this is Zeiss. We have the support, we have the like cupola, but we have no optic. And we built, we see it in the other room. We are mounting the system in this room.
So this was a test bed for...
It's a test. After that, 98, the system was not finished before the World War I began.
So this would have been a binocular system?
Yeah. We are mounting it. It's a heavy work to reconstruct. When the lower part is blocked, when you have a firing, you have a risk that gravel and earth block the door. If you have a 10 centimeter ground projected by explosion outdoors.
So you want to make sure
so you can open the upper part and open it. Against aircraft.
Air defense.
Aircraft.
Oh, so you just mount a 34, that's World War II.
World War One.
World War One as well.
1910.
1910. So they
The
already...
second one there. And
There is.
they was here at the four corner of the fortification because at each corner you have a balloon
Yes.
to observe the enemy, the attack enemy. And this balloon was very the enemy with planes
Yes.
fire on the balloons. This was to protect the balloon against.
So they put up machine gun positions
Yeah.
before the war, before World War One.
Yeah.
So they already knew this was coming. They really did think this through.
And trenches number 16, trenches number 1. It's a connection point. The German have a numeration which began at the left part, counter anti-clockwise.
So these are all infantry fighting positions.
Yeah, light shelters.
1890s. So that's shelters, and over there is fixed artillery positions. If I'm not all mistaken, we're looking at the acoustic rangefinder, and you had observation here, one that actually took a small hit. Observation for the cannons here. I did not notice this thing had gotten a hit. This got a big hit. I wonder what happened to this thing. It's very neat and clean, and it's amazing it didn't penetrate. Must at least have given the guy inside a headache if he was there. Old naval guns. And the spare barrels. It's just precious to see them in place. Everything is here. This really is where you can follow the evolution of this history. And it's very hard to not say that fortress history is important. For those of you who don't think military history is important, or fortresses and what happened during wars and what soldiers did and what was developed is important for you, where do you think the majority of the items that makes it possible for you to live your comfortable lifestyle came from? Where do you think this started? What do you think, the batteries for the Prius and for the hybrid cars just magically appeared? Had it not had something to do with development and needs for submarines and their batteries? Right here, and it's beautiful setup, made by Kohl, of course. So this is the 10.5.
Yeah. It's not restored, this one. The next, the fourth, number 4 is restored.
This looks great. This, totally, people love this.
1898, you have a great international crisis in Africa.
Yes.
And German think the risk of a war is imminent. The turret, the 10.5 turret, is not in fabrication. It is only a test turret in build. So they decide to build such kind of battery to use a turret who exists still. For the marine, it's a turret for battleship.
That's what I thought.
And they put it in to wait the disponibility of the turret. And it was planned to replace this battery by normal battery. But the finance took a role. They decide to build a battery and remain this battery and conserve this battery.
It works.
Mutzig had 3 of this battery.
And it works.
And it is today the only one who exists.
So this is basically part of a pre-dreadnought.
Yeah.
And all this is munitions in here.
Yeah, ammunition, and you have a underground floor with rooms, with sanitary, with a kitchen.
And they all have a spare barrel.
Yeah. Listen. The best quality of iron ever built.
That's good quality.
Sounds like a bell.
And then what's below? You have the...
For the ammunition, but the ventilator is missing.
And you have the white tile for light.
Yeah.
In the magazine. This.
Yeah. We have a lot of restoration to do at this point.
Yeah. So the Prussians came up with the whole white tile in order to reflect light.
Yeah. That's to clean it easier. Ammunition are sensible to humidity.
Of course, yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's a little bit of work to do here, yeah.
The next step is to restore. We want to restore this ammunition engines.
Oh yes. So would they put the detonators on here or up there?
In this room.
That was in that room.
Here you have the elevator for ammunition.
Oh, so this is just one continuous hallway. Yeah, I see the pipes need a little work.
A lot of work is waiting for us. Here you have the part of the ammunition.
I have part of a shovel.
Another piece of. You have 2 on the battery, 3 or 4.
It's good that you have the pieces. And so the crew would sleep in here as well?
That was a sleeping rooms.
Oh, you see all the electrical cables, all the original.
The kitchen.
And there's a kitchen too. So this was a self-contained battery.
Yeah, it was isolated, not connected with the underground.
How many men would be in here to man these guns?
125.
125.
25 per turret, 4 turret, 100 men, and the staff 25. but we don't begin the restoring of this part because we have no electricity. This the first step, the community is buying the area from the military, and they want to put a lot of money to restore better. And
but you actually have a community that's behind this.
yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. Now we just have to get the military out of the other forts.
They must empty the water. You have too much water here.
Yeah. There's a lot here, yeah. Oh, and here, oh, the bed. This is the beds in the original place.
Yeah, sleeping room for the crew. It's acoustic transmission pipes.
For communication.
Yeah.
It's funny to think that you can communicate through pipes that are so close together, and you can still hear what you're saying.
Because we are approaching the commanding room with the observator.
Okay.
Each turret had one pipe, and the force ended in the commanding room.
Water tank. Wow.
Here you have the commanding room.
Spiders are now in charge.
And the observator.
Yeah, that's for the range distance, right?
That's the model 96, 1896.
1896.
It's not restored. This we wait to have electricity. When we have electricity, so first we put a light, then sprung machines, engines, and then we began to restore.
I mean, you'll never get rid of the rust if you don't get rid of the moisture.
You must count 5 years for the restoration.
But you have all the bits and pieces.
We have parts, yeah, but with a new technology, you can, with 3D printing, you can make a copy of the original.
That's true.
You see no difference between a copy and the original. Each end, the distance is exactly 100 meters.
So this was sound detection?
Sound detection. And you can, with a calculation, 100 meters, estimate the enemy position.
So this was pre-World War I sound detection.
Yeah.
Now that's impressive. Yeah, you can still see a little bit of the tar, the waterproofing that's left.
The main road from Saverne to Strasbourg.
Okay, so that's what we're looking at. We're looking at the road, and that's what the artillery behind us was here to guard.
Yeah.
the Prussians really had a good idea what they were doing when it came to artillery. Far better than the French when it came to the Franco-Prussian War. The French had the better rifles, but for some reason they never picked up on that lesson. But the Prussians picked up on the ideas of the transport system, of the rail system, of the artillery, and the importance of cannons. And here at Mutzig, they were experimenting with the new domes, with the new artillery pieces, with howitzers and steel domes and cannons and forts. What would be the best? What would be economic and what would work? So much technology started right here. Let me show you.
The prototype is here. You see it.
That's the prototype down there.
The prototype of this model. Mutzig have 7 of this system.
Was it periscope as well, or just observation?
The periscope comes later, 3 years later.
But since this was a place where they were testing new things, like this, the prototype of the very first observation dome, pre-20th century and all, then this is probably one of the most special domes that I have seen, since it is the first there was. Observation dome number 1. This is one of these forts that are absolutely amazing to explore because there are so many world firsts.
And water.
So, okay, you're wearing sandals, and mine are summer boots, so we're both okay. So you have okay cabling here.
It was a commander from artillery, one of the 2 commanding posts.
So, observation dome number 1.
It's the number 1. It's number 2.
Number 2.
It was the first one which is built. You can go upstairs to open the roof.
Trust me, I have every intention. So this was built, what,
95.
95? 1895.
95.
1895.
05.
So it rolls open.
Yeah.
Oh. All right, don't look at it while I do that. Little dusty. All right, come on. Close. Yes. Oh, this is in good shape. You restored this.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, you did. I see the. This is incredibly good shape.
Yeah. It's the only one you can see which is restored. We plan to restore another one.
You have another one?
Yeah, it's the observator number 1. The fortification of Mutzig have 12 observator, 7 of this kind, of the model 05.
So this is number 2.
Number 2, yeah.
So, and your number 1, is that on the military area, or can you actually?
No, number 1 is, but it's not restored, it's empty.
But you have control over it, is the important part, I guess.
We begin the restoration in the last weeks. A double optic, yeah, it's not a mono optic. You have two binocular.
And this is just perfectly smooth order for working. What a beautiful thing. And this is for artillery observation.
Yeah.
Wow. So this is what they based all the others on. And this was the Prussians' first test.
It's the first test of this model, yeah. Prototype. As the first step will be bring electrical supply to put how do you say it? Wasser im Feuchter.
Oh, you need to dehumidifying it.
Drying.
Well, you do have a lot of spiders up here too, but they're okay. They keep the flies out. There's nothing like a prototype turret. So do you have the binoculars in the museum?
No.
Oh.
I don't know if one exemplary exists worldwide. No is known. We have no.
Yeah.
Perhaps you have a model in the US. I don't know.
Oh, did I say that? On the chair swivels, everything. It's just such a beautiful thing to see. There's nothing I love more than the word prototype and military. How many exists in total in the world, do you know? Do you know?
14.
14. Flap door. Door. This is really cool. See how the chains just rotate. This was a rotating turret. Isn't it?
Only the inner part is
The inner part, so the platform rotates.
The armored part is fixed. So the total weight is 80 tons. But the rotating turret weight is around 45 tons. It's less expensive.
Nothing wrong with that.
And a better observation capacity.
And then you have a little bunker in here. And I love the, oh, is this a brass? Oh, this is beautiful. The brass switch. Oh, that's gorgeous.
Lautsprecher, it's phone.
Yes.
Next step will be but we need electrical supplies. The cable are not in order.
That's the original cable.
Yeah, it's original.
And this is the original. Wow. Yeah. And you actually put everything in the original box too.
Yeah.
From 1895. The Prussians knew what they were doing. I'm not going to say everything, but practically, well, let's go with everything that you enjoy today, short of a piece of fruit, came in some way or some relation to military developments that took place during wartime, where more development takes place than for 50 years of peace. And then again, when you go to the piece of fruit, do you think you would have gotten the piece of fruit if it wasn't because, well, the various navies of the world felt the desperate need to go invade far-flung countries where that fruit grew?
1984, we began the restoration.
And how did that? Who started this? How?
I wrote a book about the fortification 1981, and the local authority read this book and asked me to conceive a restoration plan, and so it began at this time.
So you actually had a little bit of interest from the local authorities.
Yeah.
But you get no.
Not the military, the civil authorities.
Okay.
The military was not.
So you started this. This is your fault.
It's my project. Yeah.
Bernard spent 40 years of his life restoring this amazing old fortress. And the most interesting, fascinating part of that story is you've only seen 10% of it. The French military still occupies the remainder. We're all hoping that one day they're going to give up this property for restoration. And I, for one, will do everything I can in my lobbying letter-writing campaign to petition the French military to give up the rest of the fort to Bernard and his men so they can keep it alive for another 100 years.
I hope you enjoy history and military history as much as I love bringing it to you. And if you want to see more of the photos and documents I've used for these episodes, documentation, so on, you can go to lostbattlefields.com. And if you feel like helping me out traveling around the world to some of these far-flung locations like Van Allen Brown's first test stand behind me, or Deepness nuclear reactor down there, or the Maginot Line over there, you can donate on PayPal, protection@serviceint.com. It'll be right here, and it is also on lostbattlefields.com. You absolutely don't have to, but I appreciate any help, and I love all you guys for all the support you've shown me, because history is important. We all know that, and I'm going to bring it to you.